the joined Trinity College in 71 at the age of 5 and entered matron's dormitory. I will quote Duminda's narration of his school career as he had through the message he had sent me. Quote, during my school career, I was never into studies. In fact, I was fighting for the last place in my class from grade 1 to grade 9. Finally, in grade 9, I was requested to repeat another year by the principal at that time, late Dr. W.G. Wickramasinghe. Then, yet again, I failed in grade 9 when the late Mr. Daniels, who was the vice principal at the time, who said that he did not want to waste my father's money and wanted me promoted to grade 10. My father pulled me out of the hostel and wanted me to stay at home in Matali and travel to school as a day scholar. When I was in grade 10, it was Mr. Ukwela, my mathematics master, who spotted me and wanted me to come and sit in the front row of the class during his lesson. This was the start. I'm eternally grateful to this great teacher who saw the potential in me when most had written me off. Unquote. And gentlemen, today we have with us a product whom Trinity is very proud and whom we can proudly tell the world as a great product of Trinity College to address us. Duminda, you can take over.
I consented to the request because of Trinity College, as I have been declining all evening events because there are events almost every day. The subject that is given to me is to talk about the current taxation or the revisions that were made in the last 2 years. So I think if I just summarize the significant changes that have been made, as all of you know, the income tax rates were increased from 18% to 36%. That is a most touching change that has happened hitherto, 100% increase in the rates. People never talked about taxation all these years because it was relatively low. And that is the reason why when it was only 36%, everyone felt it. And this matter has become a subject of discussion at many fora. Then, of course, the income tax rates of the corporate sector were also increased to 30% flat. There were a lot of concessionary rates earlier given for export of goods, tourism industry, construction industry, healthcare sector, were very concessionary rates, and they were increased to 30%. There are a lot of exemptions and incentives given for corporates from different types of exemptions. They were all removed and they were all made liable. The VAT is one that has the most significant impact to the consumers. The rate was increased from 8% to 18%. 8 was an unnecessary reduction by the previous president, but it was increased from 8 to 18%. And then there were a string of exemptions that were in operation, from pharmaceuticals to petroleum to healthcare, to so many exemptions that were there, computer, software, etc., mobile phones, all the exemptions were removed, except 4 areas of exemption, that is essentially electricity, healthcare, like surgeries, healthcare also not the rooms, but anything other than rooms, and education have been kept, but rest of it has been made liable to VAT. So this was a significant change to the people, and it really reduced the purchasing power significantly for most of the people who are in the mercantile sector, like all of you, who are professionals who are practicing law, or people who are working in the corporate sector. There's a significant reduction. For example, if a person was earlier earning, I'm just taking an example, it's easy to explain, ₹1 million a month, was paying something like 100,000, between 50 to 100,000 rupees as tax. It went up from there to 300,000 to 400,000. That is the increase we are talking of. A person was paying 100,000 is now paying 400,000. So that's the impact. If you scale it down, a person who was earlier in 300,000 didn't pay any tax. Now a person who has 300,000 pays 30%, 30,000. So it has significant increase in terms of the purchasing power of all the people. The only exemption that is remaining is the provision of services to people who are overseas and who export services. That has been kept as exempt. But rest of it has all been liable to income tax and VAT. So basically we are having a high tax, or I would call high tax, but relatively high tax regime to what we had practiced earlier. Now, so I don't want to go into details of this. If you have any questions, you can ask. Also, earlier we used to offer a lot of exemptions from income tax to new investments. People who came and set up industry in Sri Lanka, people who came, whatever industry they set up in Sri Lanka, there were exemptions. All that have been removed. Now, the reason for all this is what you have to understand. Then you can decide whether it's going to stay or going to be temporary. In my view, this is going to stay. The reason is this. If you take you must understand the whole context in which the tax increase had taken place. In fact, this morning, at the chamber, I addressed the trade associations. There are 20 trade associations that came on this taxation subject. For example, power sector was saying we should be exempt. Pharmaceuticals are there, we should be exempt. Agriculture, we should be exempt. Dairies are all asking exemptions. See, the answer to this question is the government expenditure consists of 4 components. The salaries paid to public servants is about 1.3 trillion a year. That include armed forces also. Whether it's necessary or not is a different matter, but that is what we are paying, 1.3 trillion. The free education, free healthcare, Samurdhi, Swesuma, and the pensions paid to government service cost another 1.3 trillion. So the total of that is about 2.6 to 2.7 trillion a year, the government has to spend. Now those expenses are non-discretionary in nature. The government has no discretion in reducing those expenses. You can't put the public service on the road overnight. You can't cut the armed services overnight. You can't reduce salaries of public servants overnight. Pensions can't be cut. Samruddhi can't be cut. Education can't be cut. So none of those things can be reduced. So they are what is called non-discretionary expense. Unlike a company, the government can't reduce. If you put the public service on the road, next year there can be revolution. So the cost of that is greater than the cost that we are paying. So you must understand this. So 2.7 trillion is non-discretionary. Of course, people might say the wasteful expenditure, president going overseas, having independence celebrations. Those are not significant expenses in the whole scheme of things. It can't make a big impact. Then we have, so our total income, expected income this year at best is a 4 trillion. 4 trillion is the best that we're expecting from tax revenues and all the revenues. So we might end up, I think, we might fall short of it, I feel, might be 3.7, 2.8, but assume we get 4 trillion. Then we have a surplus of about 1 trillion on the current account, right? Now our interest costs, both on foreign debt and local debt, is about 2.5 trillion. So we pay about 1.2 trillion on foreign debt, and the 1.2 trillion local debt is equal. So it's about, and we are not servicing the foreign debt, only service the local debt at the moment. But that is 2.5 trillion. And our only, and that is not discretionary, that interest you can't cut down, not discretionary. So we have 2.5 trillion of interest and 2.5 to 8.8 trillion current expenditure. So we have about 5.5 trillion in terms of our expenditure. The only expenditure that you can cut is capital expenditure. But if you cut that, there is no growth. There is no investment for the future. So there is no way the government can cut the expenditure, which includes interest, salaries, and welfare. So that is, when you pay the salaries and welfare, you are left with about 1 trillion. Your interest will take 2.5 trillion. So you have 1.5 trillion deficit there. And you have a capital expenditure of 1.2, so you might have about 2.5 trillion deficit. So that is where we are at the moment. So the IMF target is that we must achieve a surplus of 5% on our primary account. That is, all expenditure except interest minus revenue must be 5% the deficit should be 5%, or the surplus must be 5% of GDP. So our GDP is about now $80 billion, maybe about 25 trillion rupees. So a 5% deficit, 5% surplus, we must have the primary account. So that means we must be able to pay from our income after expenditure, we must be able to pay our interest. That is the argument the IMF is making, which is a reasonable argument. For example, in a company of yours also, you must have income to service your interest and loans. There's the same argument, there's no different argument. It's a simple, same theory. If your personal expenses are more than your income, you have to cut it somewhere. So that's the basic theory. So, so how can the government then bridge this deficit? The only way they used to bridge the deficit in the past, up until we had to face a financial crisis, was printing money and borrowing in the public. Now, printing money has been curtailed, not stopped, curtailed under the new Central Bank Act. Under that, printing has been curtailed. But there is provision to print, but it's been curtailed. The other is to borrow. Now, the government can cut the tax rates and the deficit will go up. So the deficit can be financed through borrowing. So if you borrow, what happens? You put the interest rates up. At the moment, it's about 9%, 10% I was going at. If the government starts borrowing in the market, there will be less liquidity for the private sector to borrow and for the people to consume. So government becomes biggest borrower. The demand is more, the supply is less, so the rates of interest will go up. So it'll go back to 15, 20, 30% will go up again. So in any case, you pay, even if you have less tax on one side, you have to pay interest on the side. So one of the two, you can't have it both ways. So what the government is trying to do is to increase the tax revenue, bring macroeconomic fundamentals, stability in the macro sector, and with that, build confidence in the international community and local business that there is continuation policy, there is financial stability, macroeconomic stability. There is no hyperinflation, there is no interest rate movement, so people can plan and make investments in a more informed manner. And only if you do that, that wealth will be created. That is the theory, right? Now, what will happen with high tax rates and this policy is the growth will be limited. You can't get growth because people can consume less consumption, less demand, less investment. So the growth can be hampered. In my view, this growth rate of 1.5%, 2% might continue for 3 years. But this is the only path available. The other path is go back to what it was before, reduce the tax rates, get people to consume, drive inflation up, and drive interest rates up. So you pay either way, businesses pay either way, right? So then what is the other side? When you drive inflation, when you drive consumption, there will be demand on the import side, on the dollar. There will be big demand for the dollar, and the dollar will start going up again. And then cost of living will go up. So it's a double-edged sword. So until such time we put the macroeconomic fundamentals in place by going through the reform process that we have started now and get the credibility of the international community back into the system, because they are not going to invest in this environment with unpredictable macroeconomic situation, they are not going to invest. Even local companies are now looking at investing outside Sri Lanka because they feel that there is Sri Lanka is exposed to currency fluctuations, lack of liquidity, interest rates. Because of those reasons, they are also looking outside. So Sri Lanka is not making investments at the moment here. We don't have the advantage of India at the 1.4 billion population. We have a 22 million population. With the 22 million population, Sri Lanka can't grow. Consumption is limited. So we have to therefore put the macro fundamentals straight. And then we have to get the biggest elephant in the room is the debt restructuring. At the moment, we are a default country. So no one is going to come and invest in Sri Lanka in big ways in a default country because your ranking is minus. For example, now there are people who are saying the opportunity in Ghana to go invest in Ghana. But the moment you look at Ghana, they're default country. So no Sri Lankans are going to invest. A similar perception they have of Sri Lanka. So we have to first get the debt restructuring done. The debt restructuring process, I think, is largely completed, but there is some consensus they have reached between the private bondholders and the bilateral creditors, that is the Paris Club and the countries, they have all agreed. The bilateral creditors have agreed to give Sri Lanka the relief. The private creditors are having some conditions, but I think that most likely will be completed by June, I believe. So once that is done, only Sri Lanka becomes a debt sustainable country by IMF certification. So thereafter only we can go to international markets, our ratings will go up, we become a debt sustainable country. Now until that happens and we start repaying our debts, forgetting foreign investments in equity, but even the bilateral projects like the expressways that we built all these years, the airport project, none of those things can take off because bilateral funding won't come until you start repaying the loans. So once you start repaying the loans, we believe, in fact Japan has given a very clear undertaking that it will even pay. Once you sign the MOU for debt repayment, they'll start the airport project again. So there is commitment from China to start the expressways, all that, but we have to first start repaying. Of course, that is again loan, right? Again, we are borrowing. So, but at least that amount of credit will be required to the market to boost the market, to pump the market, because we need to expedite it. So, so that is the situation with regard to the debt restructuring. So a lot of things have to happen for this to fall into place and the tax rates to come down. I'm telling you all these things because in abstract you can look at one aspect, you can't look at, you have to look at the whole picture. Then people ask the question, why are we going to IMF? Why is Sri Lanka going to IMF? These are all IMF conditions. True. The thing is, we defaulted on our debt. And when you default on our debt, there's no one willing to give money to us thereafter. No World Bank, forget the bilateral, even multilateral, World Bank, IMF, ADB, which have given substantial money up to now since our financial crisis, are not willing to give our money because they say that we needed someone to come and certify that you will do the reforms, you will be sustainable financially thereafter, and then we can start giving money to you. It's like your own company. If you are in debt, the bank will come and tell you, you do the restructuring, you start repaying my debt first. After that, you can pay dividends. Same story. But we can't expect you all do this. You all honor, you're good people, you all honor your commitments. So we want some third party to come and say, look at Sri Lanka, reform, and you certify they are debt-free, they are sustainable, they are honest what they are doing, then we'll start giving the loans again. And the third party is IMF. No one else will come to a default situation. We can't talk to creditors whom we are defaulted without a third party backing. And third party is only IMF. So IMF is saying, okay, if you are coming, these are our conditions. You have to increase taxes, you have to tighten monetary policy, you have to floor the exchange rate. These are all conditions IMF is putting, which we are now. You have to privatize SOEs, you have to increase tariffs. So all things that the government has. So I think, in my view, we all benefited from this low tax, low tariff regime, not only the politicians. So we also have been bribed to an extent to accept these low tax regimes and deficit financing through borrowings and printing money. We're all very happy. Right? I mean, all of us enjoyed low tax rate, 18%, everyone liked it, all enjoyed it, 8% VAT, everyone enjoyed it. So when it comes to the fallout also, we have to take it, right? Because we enjoyed it, no one else enjoyed it. For instance, if you take the electricity board, the last tariff revision was done in 2010. 2010 was the last tariff revision. In 2016, they reduced tariff by 25%. Right? Not increase, reduce it by 25%. And only in 2022, that is why the revision was substantial. Because we were all, the reduced tariff was all given as a subsidy to everyone equally. So if you are giving a subsidy, it should be targeted subsidy. But every one of us enjoys reduced subsidy. So like that, we had to, I think in my view, reform all the sectors in the economy to bring market prices. Otherwise, this economy can't sustain. Unless we increase the revenues, the government can't sustain. Expenditure cutting will take place over a period of time. Now, for example, actually I must say last 2 years, they cut down, they have not increased. If you look at the recurrent expenditure, they're not gone up. It's static. So they've been disciplined that way. Then we are finding projects that are not viable, which we promote and construct. on borrowed money. So all those we have to stop if we are to come out of this problem. So that is why I say taxation is only an aspect of this. We need to look at the bigger picture and see how do we come out of it. So what is the brighter side of all? I mean, at least rather, what are the options we have? So how we see, we have a few silver linings actually, not that all, everything is bad. The lowest hanging fruit Sri Lanka is tourism. And tourism is doing very well at the moment. And that is why if you look at today, the rupee is appreciated against the dollar because of our dollar crisis. Of course, when we start prepaying the loans, it will be some demand for the dollar, but otherwise it's less now. The banking system has about $3 billion of cash in their deposits, which there is no demand for the dollar at the moment. And central bank has about $4.5 billion. So we have we have about $8 billion at the moment, from $20 billion in April 22. So tourism, we think, is the real winner. So I was in Galle on Monday, and we toured the beach area and spoke to some three-wheel drivers. And the three-wheel drivers was telling me that he earns about 10,000 rupees a day from his three-wheeler now. Right? So that is real money coming to the system. Because tourism brings money to the system to every sector of society. So that is a real benefit that Sri Lanka can get, and we can propel this business into more than what it is. So tourism is doing very well. There's great potential for BPO IPO industry. We don't have the people to put to the industry, but there's a great demand, so we have to train people and put them fast to the industry. Shipping and logistics, we are doing very well because of, thanks to Red Sea War, we are doing very well on shipping side. More containers coming here. The exports, I think, of garments and etc., commodity markets are down at the moment, but I think there's a temporary defeat. It might improve. So I think it's looking, the future looks bright to me. But we also have to learn to live with the current situation for some time. And that's what it was. So from there, I think we have come a long way in my view. And people also have understood it now. Because the best thing is people also have understood. We have, I mean, these last 2 years, we have spoken to all the trade unions, we have spoken to all political parties, we have spoken to a lot of civil society organizations to keep it under control and to go through this reform process in order for us to overcome this problem. Now, what is the biggest risk we are carrying for this program is the political risk. This whole program can collapse. If IMF walks out, the whole program will collapse. And will be worse than where we were. There's no one to come and help you. Thereafter, India don't come and help you. No one is going to come and help you. It's the worst position than where we are. So the biggest risk we are carrying is a political risk. And that is why we have extensive discussions with the NPP, the SJB, in particular because those are the two political powerhouses outside the government. They will continue with the reform program. They're not going to change it. And they have no choice, they have to go ahead with it. But at the crisis, we told them not to put people on the road, not to demonstrate, not to strike. If they do that, there is no country for them to govern. And I must say they respected that, they didn't do that. If you look at the last 2 years, okay, so any strikes at all. They didn't put people on the road or march at all on the road after the Aragali finished. So I feel that whoever comes will have to follow this path. If they try to divert from this path, sidetrack from this path, then you go back to where it was. I can't see any way how Sri Lanka can come out of the problem unless we do it ourselves. So we'll have to bear the increase of taxes until the country reaches some level of stability and the growth can take place. With growth, revenues will come into the government and gradually they can reduce the tax rates and not increase public service. It will be kept at the same or brought down. So with that, we can get a surplus. And if we get a good deal from the external creditors with regard to the repayment, then our cash flows will be strengthened with that. If they give us 10-year repayment based on what the government suggested, then our cash will be sufficient for us to meet the commitments we have. And the World Bank and IDB are also supporting in a big way. So that is basically the crux of the whole situation. And so in my view, to answer your final question, the taxation policy will continue. Don't expect reductions in taxation. I don't think it will happen. Election time also it won't happen. So only if you are able to go through this process that we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. So that's my presentation to you. And if there are any questions, please raise. No, that's okay. No, so that's okay. Yeah, that's all right. No, I left those for questions actually. I didn't want to go to the macro issues because micro issue, we know where to stop. So at the moment, as I told you, all exemptions would have been removed. Nothing is exempted. So any income that you earn, now see, you have three sources of income. You can have business income, you can have employment income, or you can have investment income. Business income is essentially from a business. That can be a company, proprietor, individual, will be business income. Like lawyers who are practicing, also all business income. Secondly, you can have what is called employment income. That is, if you're an employee of a company, you get employment income. And third category is investment income. That is interest income, dividends. Those are the three sources of income. So now, as an individual, if you have income arising from employment or investment, both are liable at the 36% rate. There's no exemption, no allowances or anything like. But you have what is called a tax-free allowance of 1.2 million a year, 100,000 a month, 2 million is exempted. Then you have a cascading rate that goes up from, I think, 500,000, 5% goes up like that. So earlier there were deductions for interest on housing loans, there were insurance premium could be deducted, so all have been removed. So nothing is exempted. Then the investment income is what most pensioners earn, the interest income. There is no exemption on that, withholding tax 5%. So all of you have to file a return of income and declare. Yeah, so anyone who has income over 1.2 million a year will be liable to some tax. Amount is small, some tax. You start at 1.2 million. So if you're having 101,000, 110,000, technically you are required to register and file a tax return. If you don't, they can find fault with you. That is a requirement. Yeah. So second one on non-residents, to answer your question, any person who's in Sri Lanka for a period exceeding 183 days, in aggregate, in any year of assessment, is considered a resident. If you have less than 183 days a year, you are non-resident. Yes. So if you are a resident, you are liable to tax what is called global income. Income arising in Sri Lanka plus income arising outside Sri Lanka. So if you pay any tax in London or someplace you pay some tax on your income, you don't have to pay on the source again, you can claim as a credit. A non-resident pays tax only on Sri Lankan source income. Sri Lankan sourced income. For example, if you have deposit interest income, you have rent income, those are Sri Lankan sourced income. So you have to pay tax on Sri Lankan source income. Example, the Sri Lankans, I mean, say if you are the diaspora, Sri Lankans who are living overseas, if you have apartments and whatever rent, you have to pay tax on that. Whether people pay, I don't know, but you have to pay. Yeah. Yes, everyone has to get a TIN registration, not a tax file. But it's not practical because, there are, at the moment, they can't manage the number of files they have. So how they are going to file returns for everyone. So it's not practical to do that. Yeah, they don't have the facility to do it and the resources.
That's a requirement only. If you don't comply with it, if there are
yeah, that. Well, the only way, see, the Department of Inland Revenue, now this issue about people not paying tax, a lot of people are saying only I am paying, why can't others pay? They are going big vehicle, this and that, why aren't they paying? So that's the enhance the net. So there, to answer your question, Department of what is called information branch. So it's very manually driven at the moment. That's why it's not there's no follow up. So what are the two biggest purchases that a person can make is land and a motor car. Others are not big purchases. So any land purchased, I think above a certain figure, every provincial council that registers land has to send a list of those people to the Inland Revenue, which they do. They send a list of all the land registered in that council, they go to Inland Revenue. If you register a motor car, the RMB above 1,200 cc, whatever, it goes, a copy goes to Inland Revenue. So from that, then they check whether, this comes manually. So that we have told them to get into system now, digitalize it. So they will then, if you first will check, you have a file with them. If you don't have a file with them, then send you a return 1V form, whatever you all must be getting those. If you get that, that means they have got information that you have bought a house or a car, but you have no file number. So that's how you get the information. But otherwise, how they get is now, at the moment, now they are collecting information from banks. all deposits or interest exceeding certain amount, they ask for information. But that again, I don't know how they're going to check, because there must be at least how many bank accounts, must be about 10 million, 20, 12 million bank accounts. How can they check one by one? It's a sample again, they'll check. If you're unlucky, you get caught, right? So there's a big digitalization effort going into that, but whether it will happen, I don't know. So otherwise, you can't enhance the tax base. So information comes from different sources. For example, if you have rented apartments to embassies, or if you are rented apartments to a company, they'll send information, but they have to send information to the department. From there, get to know. So that is how they get the information. So you're absolutely right. So that's why now the government has turned its efforts on this Aswasuma and helping vulnerable people. The World Bank is also supporting the program, is to make sure it goes to the correct person to identify. I mean, that's not an easy effort. Currently, I think there are about 14,000 families, a classic example, 14,000 families receiving the Samruddhi benefit. 60% goes to reserving, 40% doesn't go to the reserving person. Now the government tried its best to deploy the Samruddhi officer, the aggregating officer, police officer, and the Gram Niladhar to get this done and get a certification. No one is able to certify. Why? They go, A, if you certify something false, then you are responsible. 2, if you certify what is right, you are unpopular in the village. So it's not possible to do this, very difficult. So they are driving it and then through the money straight to the account. Now, do you know that there are, to monitor this Aswasuma program, there are 85,000 employees. Right? There are 14,000 Gram Sevakas, 14,000 Gram Niladharis, 14,000 agrarian service officers, and a policeman attached to each of those. So 85,000 employees administer this program, right? Still not working properly. So digitalization of the people are saying, but not easy. So now the ID card project is that the ID project to digitalize. India has given the money to do it also. It's not going through for some tender issues. But so the only way to help the vulnerable sector is to get the money directly to them, right? So that is being done, but not enough. Now even electricity, now they are giving rates to particular sectors, not across the board. So targeted subsidy is what we are promoting, but not easy to administer. In Sri Lanka, especially not easy to do. Yeah, highly politicized environment is very difficult to do. If you take the total local debt was about 11 trillion rupees, right? The local debt component. So to get a significant of that 11 trillion, 3 came from central bank, 3 trillion, central bank's funds. The EPF and ETF had about 4 trillion, and the banks had about 4 trillion. Then the private bondholders, I think they had about a billion, about a billion they had. So when you are making a debt restructure or cutting the debt, you have to take it from where it is highest. No point. Where it is the highest contribution, 80-20 rule, right? So central bank gave 100%. 100% they took the central bank 3 trillion and they took the hit. The banking system, they didn't want touch quota because that would have created, could have created a banking crisis. Could have. People start withdrawing money from the deposits, worrying that debt will be taken, because if the banks investments are cut, they also have to take it from somewhere, no? So what the banks will do, they cut the deposit. Because they have the shareholder funds are not adequate to support the debt, the public debt. So and they got information, they told me that there was going to be a orchestrated withdrawal of funds from the bank by politically inclined people. They got that information. So they didn't want to touch the banking system to collapse the bank. And one bank, backup card, the whole thing will collapse. So they didn't want to take that chance. Which I think is the right thing they did. So only one left is the EPF, ETF, no one else. So central bank took 100%. Bondholders is about a trillion, not a billion, about trillion. So that is the thing. So I think even if they couldn't get a big contribution to the haircut from that, for perception they should run it. Symbolically they should run it. Because some of the bondholders, I mean, you can see the report, profits they're reporting, right? 10 billion, 20 billion profits they're reporting. So in my view, they should have done it and taken part of that also, because everyone has part in that. So that is why the perception is not bad. But otherwise, the EPF, the issue is that is where its biggest amount is available. That's why they took the cut from EPF. The EPF, there was no hit on the capital. It was only on the interest rate. Capital was protected. It is only on the interest rate that they were going to pay was forcibly brought down, 9%. So on cash flow, that is, so they reprofile the debt. So what you do is you issue new bonds in lieu of the existing ones with a longer maturity. So it's a cash flow. It's not a, actually it's a cash flow issue. It's not a balance sheet item. It's not a P&L item. It's not a write-off. It's a issuing 10-year bonds for the existing 2-year, 3-year bonds. So you support your cash flows. That's what they did. And issued at a lower rate. So government's commitment to interest is less than. So there are this issue, but then there's no other choice. I don't think, we're not at the moment. There's a lot of talk about it. I don't think they haven't done a concept paper on that, on the wealth tax. That, of course, we advocate not to bring it. And that is a tax that is counterproductive wealth creation. But I don't know whether it will come. I also don't have, I mean, no, they don't have even a concept paper yet. No. Because there is an issue also what I was told. Because of wealth tax essentially be on land. No? Essentially on land. Now land is a devolved subject. So central government can't charge tax on land. Is that right? Is that he said? And there's an issue there. So because of that, they don't want the local government to charge a tax because they can't take it back. They overcome that problem also, wealth tax. There's some issue there. So, but of course, the IMF, I saw the projections, IMF, next year they're expecting 500 billion rupees from wealth tax. Yeah, definitely, because if you open it now, there will be a pent-up demand, right? So, it will definitely bring additional revenue to the government. Only thing is, cost is higher than what it used to be. You import a vehicle at $200 a rupee at that time. Now it is 320, 330 rupees. And once you open the vehicle market, it will go up because they think, I think they have about $400 to $500 million of money will go out. But central bank has said they can support it. There's no, they have the resources to support it. But they don't want to take a chance, I think, with the government, with the debt restructuring still going on. But that will create a lot of revenue to the government, no doubt about it. Yeah, that is the thing. So they are a little worried in opening it out. And they feel that they can control it for the moment, they don't need to do it. Of course, there are employees in the sector who are affected. The leasing industry is affected because of that. So there are industries that are affected by it because we have a huge import economy also. We can't forget that. We can't only look at exports. We have a huge import economy, which is bigger than export. Our export economy is about $12 billion. Import about $20 billion. So it's a big import economy also. So which we need to look out and support. So vehicle at the moment, I think they might grant, now they are giving this, what do you call this, knockdown, electrical, they are allowing this, what do you call, semi-knockdown version to be imported and then assembled here. Some people are doing it. But even if they permit, it won't be large scale. I don't think they'll ever permit Jaguars and Range Rovers to come again. I doubt very much. Not. Yeah, but that was a racket, no? That was people employed overseas became absolute racket. Yeah, now you an employee, say Kusumavati, who's employed in Kuwait or Qatar, can't import a 7 Series electric BMW for $140 million. That's what they did. So all the people, what they did was they sent the money and brought it back. So the Employment Bureau should have checked that Kusumavati can't earn, she only earns $1,000 a year. How can she import a $100,000 vehicle? That's our people play up the system. That's the problem. That has been stopped, I think. Now. I was told that under their scheme, there's a Rolls Royce that has come, a Phantom, electric. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So that's why they will not enforce these things. So don't worry. You know, these are all, of course, if she has high income, they'll expect you to pay. Yeah. But if it's big, they'll expect you to open a file and pay because now they will get the information. Withholding tax certificates is going to them now. No? So they might expect you to do it, someone to do it for her. No, the withholding tax now, you have 5% deducted, no, that information goes to the department. So on a random basis, they might look at it and send it later. If you are lucky, unlucky, you'll get it. So that is required, however much difficult it is. But not if you have substantial, not on substantial income, they won't do it. It's liable. Yes. Yeah. If you bring to it's exempt. That's not taxable. If you bring it to Sri Lanka, it's exempt. But you have to declare it. You use the correct word. You have to declare it. You have declared, but it's exempt. Any money that is brought from overseas Sri Lanka is exempt. Whatever it is exempt. Gambling or betting, even all exempt. But you have declared. That's the correct. Sorry, you can use that word. Good. You have declared. Yeah. No. No. Not unless you are in business of. No. VAT is liable only on if you are carrying out a business. Capital gain is different matter. Yes. Yes, first south, yeah. If you have lived in a house for 3 years, if you can prove it's not liable. Yeah. Moment, yeah. So they have imposed conditions on the fiscal side, very clearly saying what our fiscal target should be. They very clearly said by 2027 you have to reach 5% of surplus primary account. So that is what the government has increased taxes to reach that target. 5% surplus of GDP must have in the primary account. That means our income minus expenses must be enough to pay our interest. Very clearly they have said. Then our debt to GDP ratio must come down to 91% by 2032. Now it is 125% of GDP. We have to bring it down 91% by 2032. Right. Then we have to SOEs have to be reformed and sold. They have not mentioned what and what. SO reform has been given. What you call publicity reform. So those are the targets they have given us. But they are very clear. The clear fiscal targets are the revenue ratio. And they are not talking expenditure. IMF, now people are saying, why can't they? IMF said, expenditure not in our area. That is the government's policy. We can't interfere in that. But taxation is we are interfering. No funding, CEB tariff rates. The second tranche was not approved until CEB approved the revised tariffs on 15th of February last year. Then the second tranche also had to be approved only once the revision was done. So they are involved directly with the CEB on tariff revision. So like that they have said, they know our guys play the game. This time they decided no, they are directly going to the institution. So CEB tariff reforms are approved by them for the tranche to be approved. So like that they have given targets, very clear targets on the fiscal side, monetary side, and public sector management. Very clear. And I think that's good. Because that is what we have brought some level of stability, right? What I said and what it was. What should it be is different matter, but what it was. And that is because IMF insists. Otherwise, countries won't have be disciplined to do all these things. No chance. Debt. Yeah, so the basis on which the government is absorbing the debt is that there is a repayment. That is the IMF condition. CEB also had a debt. The CEB had a debt of about ₹1 trillion when the IMF came in. This the government absorbed that debt. But they put a surcharge. The CPCs put a surcharge on the petroleum and use that to pay the debt. So it can be 10 years. So they are taking out the balance sheet of Sri Lankan and giving it back to the government. Anyway, these are all guaranteed by government. Anyway, government balance sheet includes all government guaranteed. So they are saying to take it and then there's a repayment. So nothing done yet. So the buyer has to have a price of the ticket to repay the alleged corrupt money. Yeah. So I don't know. I think we need to have a laws to bring that in. But I was told Malaysia in fact brought money in of that former Prime Minister. They passed a law and they brought it in. So you need a strong commitment to do that. You have to. No, I think when we ask money, when our people into Dubai to seize bank accounts of some of the former parliamentary presidents, they said you have to file action in your country first, right? So we have to have a commitment to do that. I don't know they'll do it. Going into the past, no, but some might do it. I don't know. Yeah. So they have collapsed because of the crisis. They have collapsed. So, but we are as a chamber strongly against the government's decision to do away with the Parate executions. In fact, we are issuing a statement tomorrow, day after. No, they were on suspension, right? Because what we feel is that the suspension is not going to help. That will drive away credit from the SMEs out and increase interest rates. So they'll be severely affected if that happens. So we think that is not the way to do it. But as you said, yes, businesses have collapsed. I mean, it's obvious, right? Financial crisis has resulted in so many small businesses going out of business. That has happened. But we should have a strong Chapter 11 type of situation, which US has. We don't have bankruptcy law in this country, where we can put these loss-making institutions into temporary suspension from action, so that you resurrect those businesses, give time for them to resurrect, 2-3 years for them to come out, so that creditors can't take properties, but you give time for them to operate under the system. Yeah, but that's the thing. So we need something like that, so that then people have to reserve priority. You can, even a creditor can put you into that, and then you give time for reform and come out of the crisis. So those are all things. But Sri Lankans also are not honest people, so they have to keep them in mind. Yeah. It will continue for some time. This time, as a recession might take for 4 or 5 years, even longer, because of the the Ukraine war, the Middle East crisis. China is not doing well. So I think this might go on for 3, 4, 5 years, I think. Yeah.
If I may use the words, sacrificing your time to spend some time with the Colombo branch members, may I call upon Mr. Rohan Dunuila to propose the vote of thanks.
Very enlightening discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Hulangamuwa, on behalf of the Colombo branch. It's an honor to have you here, and we thank you once again for taking the time off to come and enlighten us and reminding us that we have to tighten our belts a little more. Thank you. I would like to call upon Mr. Dasanayaka to present a small token of appreciation for Mr. Hulangamuwa.